Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the shop. First of all, I'd like to apologize for the lack of content as of late. I'm just going to say that summer is a busy time for me and my family, and I'm going to leave it at that. I am still working on Elmer's engine number 2. In the next video, I hope to make the pistons, the cranks, and the flywheel. We'll see if I can get that all on one video. What I'm going to talk about today is an issue that is quite annoying, and that is working around the camera tripod when I'm filming over the lathe or over the workbench here. Now, some of you might notice that the angle of my camera over the workbench is slightly different from before, and that is because I am no longer using the tripod that I got. I made a parallel arm for the camera. Now, the way the parallel arm works is that each section of the arm has two sections in it that are parallel with each other. And what that does is, if you notice, my camera is in a complete vertical position. No matter what position I move the arm in back and forth, the camera will stay in that vertical position. This will give me a lot more versatility when it comes to filming over the workbench, mainly because some of my equipment, namely my belt and disc sander combo, I cannot get the tripod over there at a good angle to show you what I'm doing, and this arm will allow me to do that. And I will be able to get better shots, especially when I'm using the milling attachment on the lathe. Now, I do have a set of drawings for this arm. If you would like to make one yourself, shoot me a message with your email address and I will send the drawings off to you. I modeled this in Fusion 360. If you would like a copy of the Fusion 360 file, just let me know and I can send that along as well. So let's go make the arm. Okay, I did model this arm in Fusion 360 and I have a set of drawings. If you would like to make one for yourself, feel free to send me a message with your email address and I will email the drawings in PDF form. The first thing that we're going to work on are these 4 arms. For that, I'm using 3/4 inch aluminum square tubing with a 1/16 inch wall. This is stuff that I just picked up at the local hardware store. On each end, there's going to be a clearance hole for a 5/16 bolt. The hole is centered on the stock and 3/8 of an inch from the end. Now, as you can tell in the drawing, I did not dimension the length. That's because it's going to be user customizable. You can make these arms as long or as short as you want, you know, within reason, of course. For my needs, I've determined that 14 inches is going to suffice. Now, I've already rough cut my stock to 14 inches on the bandsaw, and that is going to be good enough. Rough cut is good enough. There is no reason to put these in the mill and square up the ends to make them all exactly the same. As long as they're all within a few thousandths of each other, you're going to be fine. What is important is that the hole spacing between this pair and this pair are exactly the same. This hole spacing here. If those holes are not exactly the same width apart, then you're going to have binding in the final assembly. So how we're going to do that is I'm going to mark the hole on one piece of stock, then I'm going to stack it on top of the other one and clamp it together, and I'll take it to the drill press and drill the holes all the way through both pieces. This way I can ensure that the spacing is going to be exactly the same between these 2 arms. And then I'll do the same for this one, and the hole spacing will be exactly the same between these 2. Alright, I've got my stock clamped up. I've got my holes center punched. We're going to start with an 1/8 inch drill bit, and then we'll follow it with the 5/16. Sorry if the video is a little shaky. Now the holes are perfectly spaced between the pair. I'll do the same for the other pair. All right, we got the holes all drilled. Now we want to make sure that each pair stays together. So what I'm going to do is on the inside where it won't be seen, I'm going to take my center punch and mark them so that I can keep track of which pair goes together. Now with those center punch marks, I'll be able to match these two together and match those together during final assembly. In order for me to mount the camera to this arm, I'm going to repurpose the head off of my tripod. And the way that it was mounted was just with a stud. The head would slip over the stud, it would pivot left and right, then you have the locking screw to lock it in position. So I'm basically just going to copy this into a piece of steel. I'm going to drill and tap it for 1/4 20 so that we can mount it to the arm. I do have this dimensioned in the drawing. If you're using the same tripod head I am, which this one is off of a Sunpack 6060 XL. It's one of the cheaper tripods from Walmart. If you're going to use one of those, then you can just take the dimensions right off the drawing. If you're using a different tripod, then you'll of course have to take the measurements and copy however the head you're using is mounted. Alright, I've got our stock mounted in the forejaw and indicated. I've already made a cleaning pass on the face. Now we're going to turn down the major diameter, which is 1 3/8, and we're going to go approximately 1.25 inches down the length. Now this is sticking out a little farther than I would want, but we'll make light passes and we should be okay. One inch 3/75. And now we're going to turn down the stud, which is a diameter of 680 thousandths and a total depth of 750 thousandths. All right, I've got it turned down mostly to size. I've got it to within 0.010 of an inch, but the part is pretty warm, so I'm going to let it cool down, and I'll measure it again and take the final pass from there. All right, the piece has cooled down quite a bit. If you remember, the last measurement I made was 687 thousandths. Now that it's cooled down, we're sitting at about 685. I'm going to go ahead and test fit the head on just to see how it fits, if at all. And that actually fits quite nice. I'm just going to leave it just like that. Can tighten down, and then I can swivel. So that's part's done. Now I'm going to get set up and we'll drill and tap for 1/4 20. Yeah, we're set up to drill for 1/4 20. I'm first going to spot it with the center drill. Then I'm going to pilot with a 1/8 inch drill bit, and then drill the tap drill size, which is a number 7 for 1/4 20. And we need to go to a depth of 1 inch 125 thousandths, actually a little bit over that, so that we can make sure we get the full depth. And now we can go ahead and tap it. We're not going to go the full depth, there's no need to. I'm actually just going to get the tap started, a few threads, and then I'll finish it in the bench vise. Now we're going to face this end and trim it to its final length. We're looking for 125. We got 124. Okay, I went and finished this part off camera. I finished tapping the hole, and then I used a hacksaw to cut a groove across the top. And that groove is for these locating pins on the bottom side of this washer. And the purpose for that is so that when you're turning the head left and right, those pins prevent this washer from turning, which would cause this screw to come loose. Next, we're going to work on these hinge brackets. And for that, we're using 2" by 1/8" flat stock. And we need 2 of each hinge bracket. And much like these arms, we need to make certain that the holes are perfectly in line with each pair of brackets. So what I did was I cut my stock to length, and I used double-sided tape to stick the 2 blanks together. That way when we drill those holes, we can make sure that they're perfectly aligned between each plate. Also, I've drawn these up in 1:1 scale. So what I've done was I've cut these out, and then I've used a spray adhesive to glue them to the plates. Now I'm going to take it to the bandsaw and rough cut it, and then I will go over to the disc sander and sand them down to the line. Now I'm not going to be able to film any of this. This is part of the reason why I'm making this arm, is because my disc sander and my belt sand or bandsaw are off in a corner, and I can't get a good angle with the camera. But once I have this arm made, I will be able to film more of using the bandsaw and the disc sander. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, then we'll come back and we'll punch these holes. Alright, I've got all the parts cut out and then sanded to the line. Now we're going to center punch all of these holes, and then we'll take them over to the drill press and drill them clearance for 5/16. Alright, now that we got the holes all drilled, we can peel off our template, and we should just be able to twist these right apart. And then the double-sided tape peels off easily enough. Now when you're doing this, you want to make sure that you don't get the workpiece too hot, because that will weaken the glue bond from the double-sided tape, and these will start to shift on you. So that's something you just have to be aware of. Okay, now we can start piecing this thing together. I did one thing off camera, and that's I made the arm that the head stub screws onto. It was just 3 inches long and it has a couple holes in it. I'm going to be using 5/16 bolts, lock nuts, nylon lock nuts, some nylon spacers, and some washers. Here it is. The idea with this is to have just enough tension on these screws so that it's not flopping around, but also stiff enough so that it stays in whatever position you put it in. Okay, off camera I went ahead and made the pivot that will mount to the wall. I made it off camera for a couple reasons. One, the video is starting to run a little long and I wanted to get this done as quick as possible. And there's nothing overly complicated with these. On this piece here, this will actually mount to the camera arm. I drilled and reamed a 1/2 inch hole to accept these 3/8 bronze bushings. And then I recessed it on this side for the lip on the bronze bushing. And I left, you're not gonna be able to see it on the camera I don't think, but the bronze bushing is proud of the surface just a little bit so that we can take advantage of that bearing surface on the bushing. Then I drilled and tapped 1/4 20 on each side to mount to the arm. And then I drilled and tapped 1/4 28 for a set screw that I can lock the arm on the shaft. And for the shaft, I just put this in the lathe in the forward jaw, indicated it, and then I turned down the 3/8 shaft to fit inside these bronze bushings. And then when I have it mounted on the wall and have it in the position that I want, I tighten down that set screw and then it won't move. All right, here she is all completed. All I need to do now is mount it to the wall and I can start using it. Now the idea is that I'm going to make a second one of these pivot shafts, and I'll have one mounted over the workbench and one mounted over the lathe. Then I can just pull the arm off of the pivot shaft and move it to one place or the other. And if there's some other place that I need one, then I can make a third one and mount it where I need it. Now, as I said before, I do have drawings for this arm. If you would like to make one yourself, shoot me a message with your email address and I will email the drawings out to you. With that, that'll do it for this video. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.